All right, it's time for Yogi and the BeachMan. Hi, I'm Jim the Yogi.
And I'm Rick Beach, the BeachMan.
We're two Michigan transplants now living in Southwest Florida.
In fact, we're cousins born in 1964, just a month apart.
I like to meditate.
And I like to play bass in a band.
I'm into chanting Om.
And I'm into throwing down some classic rock.
But together, we're on a mission
to promote people that are helping other people.
We want to make the world a better place.
One conversation at a time.
So sit back,
turn up the volume,
and get ready to laugh.
Because we like to have fun
while we spread the love.
Interviewing lovely people. Yes, we have fun.
Hey, Margaret.
Hey, guys.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. We're excited about this. So just, I'm Jim, the Yogi.
And I'm Rick the Beachman. My last name's Beach, so that's why it's Rick Beach, the Beachman.
Amazing. And I am Margaret, and I am a dietitian.
And what do you got there in your lap?
This is my toy poodle, Finn.
Hi, Finn.
We both commented on your website. He goes, "That's a cute dog." I'm like, I know. I checked him out earlier. I wanted to hear more about the dog.
Yeah, he's 10 and a half years old and like the most needy boy I've ever met. So here he is in my lap.
Perfect. We love dogs. We're big dog lovers. So
yeah, I noticed someone has two big
that's me.
Poodle
That's
mixes.
Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a 6-pound Yorkie.
Oh yes. We love
If you'd
the
have told me
6 pound.
20 years ago that I'd be a 60-year-old man with a 6-pound Yorkie, I would have shot myself in the head, but here I am.
I also never thought I was a little dog girl, but here we are 10 years later.
Oh, they're so much easier. So much easier.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking our next dog might be a small dog, but we'll see.
Yeah. It makes traveling and really anything else so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Less food. I don't know if you listened to our podcast that went out a couple weeks ago on what's in your dog's bowl.
Yeah.
You did. Great. So it's like now we're changing everything we're doing with how we're feeding our dog, and it's getting a lot more expensive.
Oh my gosh. I switched Finn over to like a more kind of whole food dog diet, I guess about half a year ago. And yeah, my bank account doesn't love me, but Finn loves it.
Right? There's so much happier.
I made a new batch of food for my dog yesterday, actually. And 3 pounds of ground turkey, kale, broccoli, carrots, rice, and 4 eggs in 2 pots. I split them up into 2 pots, 4 eggs, 8 eggs. So of organic, of course, nothing but the best for Rocky. And but I can tell he just looks better than he did before.
Yeah.
And he's really healthy. So I'm not
Yeah.
arguing.
And I'm like,
what I eat.
Are we feeding ourselves this way? Or are we like so focused on feeding our dogs this way? Because we should be feeding ourselves this way.
Oh, I certainly have really made a huge effort, especially in the last couple of years, to go that route. That's why we like talking to people like you. And once again, we didn't even mention you're In Touch Nutrition.
Yes. I own a business called In Touch Nutrition. It's designed. Yes, it's designed to help specifically women, but I'm open to speaking to whoever, but designed to help women kind of break out of that diet culture mentality and figure out how to eat well, regain their confidence again, while also having a healthy body. Kind of lifelong wellness instead of focusing on fad diets and weight loss drugs and all of that stuff. So,
okay, that makes a lot of sense, and that's
it. One thing I've done really is just try to make myself much more knowledgeable on what I shouldn't be eating. And it was kind of a revelation to me about a year and a half ago when I found out about seed oils and just how terrible they are for you. And it was all this big business corruption basically with the government back in the 60s and 70s. There was no fructose corn syrup before like 1973.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're telling us to give it to our kids, and everyone's drinking it in everything, and it's just poison.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think you can look at a high fructose corn syrup as sugar, right? Like sugar is sugar, and sugar is what is feeding cancer cells, and sugar is what is causing disease, and sugar is what is causing people to keep wanting more of the things that aren't the best for our bodies. And so just all of that goes into that whole high fructose corn syrup thing. And like, I'm very much about moderation. So, hey, if you have it here and there, it's probably not going to poison you in the long term. But if, like you said, it's in everything. And if we're constantly putting in processed foods and all these sweet foods and drinks and things that have it added, that's not good for our bodies in the long run, no matter which way you look at it.
And
We're
I just heard,
both in agreement on that.
I heard some stats recently that they're like, and 52% of our kids have chronic diseases.
Wild.
Chronic diseases. And it's only from nutrition or lack thereof. The school lunch programs with Kraft macaroni and cheese poison packets. That's what I call them. I would never eat that. That stuff will actually flame on. It will turn on fire. And
you know, I grew up eating Easy Mac every day of my life.
Oh, I ate so much of it. I ate so much, and I love it. It's so good. And I'd throw, and then I used to throw like some Belvita in there too, even to make it more toxic.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you have to like then go deeper down into, like, look at all these European countries that have easy access to fresh food, a local farmer's market in every single neighborhood, ocean fed fish that they're getting fresh every day, and that's what they're eating. And like, we have such a huge country and we have not set up our infrastructure well enough to serve all of our people, and that's where all of these preservatives and everything come in.
Well, there are fruit and vegetable preservatives that are sprayed on stuff we get from European exporters that is illegal in Europe to feed to their people.
Yep.
But it just comes right over here, and they just I don't get it.
It's mind-blowing.
What I don't understand is why and people just don't care. They don't understand why they're 40, 50, 60 pounds overweight. All you have to look to figure that out is on the ingredient boxes of the plastic containers you're eating out of.
Yes. And I will say that is a whole other conversation too, of like socioeconomic status and just the access to education, because I mean, you do have people who can't read, and you do have people who don't have access to the education to understand how to go about getting their information. But I also am in agreement with you that a lot of us do know what we're putting into our bodies, and and sometimes it's a convenience factor thing, which is most of our processed foods. And other times it's lack of self-control, or it's disordered, or, you know, the list goes on and on and on.
Yeah, I like to call it survival food. Like when you're traveling and there's nowhere else to eat, so you stop at Taco Bell. That's survival food.
Yep.
You're just making it through. I think I understand in Europe they process their grains differently. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. And I honestly do not know specifically how, but it's a less processed way. And so you'll probably hear like a lot of your friends that go over to Europe will come back and they're like gluten intolerant in America, but when they're over there, they're like, I ate bread and pasta every day and I had no issues. I don't know if it's what they're spraying, to your point, what they're like spraying on their food, or if it's just, you know, closer to home manufacturing and they're not using as much crap that goes into it. I don't know the actual processing over there, but
I've heard what it is. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's the way they process it, and you don't get all the gluten, and it just leaves the nutrients and doesn't make it where it's bad for us like our American processed food does.
Well, and again, part of that comes with stability, right? Like the more processed a food is, the more shelf stable it is. And so that's how all of our companies here are making money. Whereas over there, they're feeding smaller centralized populations typically. So I think
there's like 4 major food companies in America. They have monopolized food.
Yeah, we've monopolized everything, but and
I'm not a fan of it, and any of those type of companies. But so tell us about In Touch Nutrition. What you said it's mainly geared toward women, but anyone is welcome. I assume.
Yes. So I am very big on mindful eating. And mindful eating can be taken in so many different ways, but I'm big on mindful eating once you have the knowledge of how to eat well. So I basically take people through a 90-day program, and we talk about the basics of nutrition. We talk about exercise. We talk about micronutrients, macronutrients. We talk about diving deep into like our emotional things that are holding us down from being able to eat the way that we should be eating to have the healthiest body that we can have. A lot of it is like conditioning over the years, right? Like when we're infants, babies, they are born, they cry, they feed, they go to the bathroom, sleep, and they do that all naturally. And like they feed, and when they're full, they're done, or they like spit up a little bit and then they're good. And like they don't need food for a couple hours. But literally society like conditions us through scheduling to not listen to our bodies. Because think about, I mean, I have nieces and nephews that are in grade school now, and they'll have breakfast, 7 a.m. and then lunch at 10:30 a.m. and then they're not getting home for an afternoon snack until 3:30, 4 p.m. So what do you do in the meantime? If you're hungry, you don't do anything, right? We are like trained to not listen to our hunger cues. And then that leads to not being able to understand our fullness cues. And so that starts from childhood. That starts from like the minute you go to school and are in a structured environment that doesn't allow for flexible eating, I guess you could say. So my program incorporates a lot of that, like kind of like getting to the root of why you believe you should eat the way you eat, and kind of like getting rid of all that former thought and training to then have a new mindset on, okay, how can I actually eat well? How can I actually listen to my body? How can I actually move my body in productive ways that are going to serve my body well? Yeah, so it's just a deep dive, emotional, educational process to hopefully get these women, and I may end up growing it to a broader population, but specifically women for now, to a better place where they're not overthinking food, not overthinking exercise, feeling confident in their skin, hopefully reducing some health issues that people are having. Yeah.
Sure. I've heard that overeating, there's been studies. Well, I've been an L&D nurse for the last 5 years.
Oh, amazing. I used
yeah,
to work in the NICU.
Oh, very cool. So
Yeah.
then you know that even babies, it's very important not to overfeed them because it stretches out their stomach at a young age. And then they always crave for the stomach to be stretched out. So that leads to overeating and obesity later on in life.
So a baby doesn't cut themselves off natural?
You can overeat them, overfeed them. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that comes with the intuition of the parent, right? Like, like you need to be making sure the diapers are wet, and you need to be assessing, like, are they hungry, or did they literally feed 30 minutes ago and maybe they need a different type of nurture? Like maybe it's a skin to skin time, or maybe it's, I'll sing to you and rock you, so.
And I think a lot of the overeating at that level comes from bottle feeding, where you're, trying to get them to chug the formula down, where when they're having to work for their food, they're getting tired with the breastfeeding.
They're burning, they're burning energy while they're feeding, basically.
Yeah.
And they like don't have that. They don't always have that suck, swallow, breathe reflex when they're first born. So they're also using a lot of energy, like figuring that out as well.
Right. Those neurons firing, like, what's happening here?
Yeah. But typically, if the parent is intuitive, and I mean, it's also different if you're using formula versus breastfeeding, right? Because breastfeeding, you can be probably a lot more intuitive, where formula feeding, you're kind of going based off of what they currently weigh, the ounces, whatever that they need per day. So it's
they're
definitely
getting a 60 milliliter bottle, and you're only supposed to give them 20, and you're like, what sense does that make? Why don't they make little bottles for newborns?
Yeah. But and there is a point, right, where that growth is important, right? That like stomach stretching is important because they do need to grow and develop. But yeah, I think part of that is like the intuition of the parent as well. Nature versus nurture, right?
Right.
Well, a lot of these processed foods, that are designed, like Lunchables, for example, they're designed and they have chemical structures in all the processing to make you hungrier when you're done with their product.
And they're addictive.
And they're addictive. So these kids, first of all, they're eating this processed junk that isn't giving them those full signals. And then they come home and they eat their Doritos or whatever instead of a pear or an apple or whatever. So it's the evil is in the processed foods. We're all in agreement on that. That is, if you can keep your kids away from that kind of stuff, and yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so tough because we're also like a work hard, play hard society, even in retirement. Like we're just work hard, play hard people. So the convenient foods that have, like, I just heard that a water bottle, maybe Dasani, I don't remember specifically, don't quote me on that, but someone was adding salt to the water bottles to make you keep wanting, like, to get you thirstier, to keep drinking
Interesting.
their water. And I'm like, we all need a little bit of salt, but like we don't really need it in our water. Like, so I found that fascinating, but we are in such a work hard, play hard society that we go to these quick foods because it's easy. Like if you're on the road in between the gym and the beach with your friends, like you're gonna grab Chick-fil-A or whatever is right there, or you're gonna keep frozen dinners stocked or keep Lunchables stocked. Like our society has really created a monster, which is highly unfortunate. But the only way I see around that is having community farms, but that would be
Yes.
nearly impossible. Like just knowing the community I live in, I'm like, I cannot imagine that being successful.
Here in
It's
Punta
tough.
Gorda, Florida, have not been there, but there's a co-op farm called Warden Farms. I've looked into it several times. It's just a little bit of a drive from here, but you buy into their co-op. You go at certain times of the year, and you get a newsletter weekly. Hey, we're open on Saturday from 10 to 3 and Sunday from whatever to whatever. And here's what we have: eggplants and strawberries and and then you can go and get your allotment that you bought into, in January or whatever program it is. And as a matter of fact, now that I'm talking about this, I'm going to make it a point to look into that further. But that is one like major organic farmer here locally. So you have to have someone willing to do that. And I'm sure he's probably not making as much money being the organic co-op farm guy than he would be if he was just growing watermelons and selling them to Publix for $6.
Yeah.
Right.
The nice thing about this area is you don't have to drive very far and you're in the country, but in some areas where it's sprawling suburbs for 20, 30, 40, 50 miles, it's pretty hard to get that amount of land to grow anything on.
Right. And like you said, they don't make money, like they're not making the money. So and if you're buying into a co-op, you are of a certain financial status that you can afford that. And like we have a lot of people all around this country that can't do that. And so it's like
Right.
it's this stupid money game that will forever be.
It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
And this is the second time I passed on this the first time you mentioned that about the lower economic status, because it instantly brought me back to, okay, that these are the same kids in the lower economic status that are getting the free lunches, which are full of ultra processed foods, which then cause them to want to overeat because of the chemical structure of these foods. And that's why 52+% of our 50% plus of our kids have chronic diseases right now. And it's crazy. Like more than half of the Americans we're all considered obese.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
almost
and
embarrassing.
It's like 60%.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
and when
Overweight
you
or
just
obese.
said that, I just had this epiphany of like our government is funding these programs, right?
Right.
And what else does our government fund? Big
Corn.
pharma,
Oh,
like
sure.
Oh yeah.
big ag, like
Oh.
all of these monopolized thing. Like so are we actually doing good by providing these things? Is my plate and my pyramid, are those actually good educational tools, or are they tools that like are creating a bigger problem?
Well, go ahead and talk about the food pyramid for a second, since you brought that up. I mean, that was
A
like
scam.
a scam. The FDA or the the government figured out what we need to eat to get the proper amount of nutrition, but
Like
you can't get that
ish.
proper amount of nutrition from the food pyramid,
Right.
which is ridiculous.
And the government's guidelines are based on a 2,000 calorie diet, which who needs that, right? Like if you're extremely active throughout the week, maybe, but the average person who's moderately active might not need that much nutrition, number one. But number two, it's such loose guidance, right? Like I I like my plate that's out now much better than the pyramid, because the plate gives you a picture of balance, right? It's like, here are your food groups: protein, grains, fruits, vegetables, dairy. Eat those. But then there's no more like guidance on micronutrients and just, yeah, I like it for the balance, but agree with you. Like
I like
a
how
bit of a
dairy has
fan.
been moved off the
Yeah,
plate.
yeah, like it's optional. Except like as you age, like dairy is so important because it has calcium, and a lot of times they'll fortify it with vitamin D, and all those things work together to prevent osteoporosis, right? So
Yeah.
like, and then if you look at the Mediterranean diet, which is the most highly researched probably diet right now and has really amazing health benefits, they'll include dairy like regularly, low fat dairy, cheese, like anything, because it gets you the micronutrients that your body needs. So yeah, like I like the balance factor of my plate, but all in all, I think it's like a cop out of education.
Totally. Yeah. It goes back to what you were saying, where these different industries have kind of taken over, and they're taking over the science on what's studied, and they're taking over what's produced and what's fed to us. So
Well, that's because they pay for the government.
to look the other way.
Well, they
Everybody's
actually
bought off.
fund the departments that are supposed to be regulating them. It's and well, just yesterday, RFK Jr. endorsed Trump, and his big thing during his speech, I don't know if you watched it, but his big thing was, what's more important than the health of our kids? And he was thumping on how, and basically what the same conversation we've just had about what we're doing to our kids, with the vaccine schedules, with the ultra processed foods, and that 50%, 52% of chronic disease in our kids. 100 years ago, the average American was getting 2 or 3 pounds of sugar a year. Now we're getting hundreds of pounds of sugar a year. And over the course of 10, 20,000 years of evolution, or whatever you believe, but no matter it, you can't go from a couple of pounds of sugar a year to 100+ pounds of sugar in a blink of an eye, evolutionary wise, and expect that we can handle it.
Absolutely.
And you said something, you said something about the sugar and cancers. And I've been hearing more about, if you starve your body of sugar, you are starving the cancer of everything.
It's food.
Yeah. Yep.
And I've now become personal acquaintances or friends, you'd say, with a couple of people that I personally know that have cured their own cancer with diet after they've been diagnosed with months or a year or 6 months to live, and 25 years later their doctor's dead for 20 years, but they're still kicking. And it's just the mindfulness of knowing what you're putting in your body, and I think importantly what not to.
And speaking, go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, speaking of mindfulness, you mentioned mindful eating, so I was going to have you talk about that a little bit and what your thoughts on it.
So mindful eating, and I love that you brought that up with the sugar thing, because sugar is not all created equal either, right? Like all these added sugars are kind of the problem. But if you're getting sugar from fruit, and you're eating that in moderation, that is very, very good for your body, right? Like, I'm not talking like the added sugar and Chobani with the fruit at the bottom. Like, I'm not talking that. I'm talking like eating an apple, or
you buy a pineapple,
you
cut it up and you eat it.
Yeah, or making your own like strawberry preserves, where you're just cooking them down and it's just jelly-like, and like that's the type of fruit that our body doesn't mind, or sugar that our body doesn't mind. It's just those added sugars. And that's where the mindfulness comes in, right? That what I mean by mindfulness is, I look at it as you are very in touch with how your stomach and your brain are feeling, right? So are you guys aware that, I'm sure you are, but the vagus nerve that runs from your like stomach to your brain, it goes right down your spinal cord, that connects them directly. And so we cannot
I'm not familiar with this. So could you, what is this nerve again?
It's literally, it's called the vagus nerve, and it's what controls hunger and fullness signals basically. But it runs from your brain to your stomach, and they are directly connected. And so we cannot sit here and deny that not listening to our bodies is an option, because if we're not listening to our bodies, how are we supposed to get that nerve to do its job, right? Like, it's in our body for a reason. We can't just ignore it. And so mindfulness is bringing back that connection, right? Like, using your brain, because we have wants. Like, if you want to go out for ice cream, sometimes you just want that, and that's okay, right? Like, ice cream in moderation is not going to hurt you in the long run, right?
Right.
But if you're craving ice cream every single day, and you're eating that every single day in excess, and you're not focusing on what your stomach's feeling, and you're just focusing on what your mind is feeling and wanting, then that's not the goal. But if mindfulness is bringing together the stomach and the brain, and intentionally choosing what you put in your body in a very thoughtful, but also a very non-judgmental way. So it brings in a lot of emotion. And that's why I like said emotional stuff earlier, because again, we have been conditioned over time. You guys have, I have, we've been conditioned over time to not listen to our bodies and not connect it with our thought process. We're mostly taught to eat when we're told to eat, or eat when it's time to eat.
Right.
So yeah, mindfulness is getting to know those hunger and fullness cues again, and using them in ways that are going to serve your body well, but also letting yourself use them in ways when you kind of just want to like eat something you want, you know? So
Sure.
it's balance, right? It's all about balance.
Yeah, there's a great book that I read called The Yoga of Eating by Charles Eisenstein. And he takes that exactly what you're saying and he adds another level to it. Like a lot of times when we're eating, we have food on our fork, we put it in our mouth, and we're already digging into our next bite before we've actually chewed and swallowed the first bite. And he says, slow down.
Yep.
Pay attention to that food going in your mouth, what's happening in your mouth, how you're when you're chewing it, the different taste flavors, everything that's happening, and be present to your food. Eat mindfully with every bite. Chew it enough
Absolutely.
so it actually mixes with your saliva instead of a couple chews and then swallowing it down. And don't even touch your fork again until you've swallowed and cleared your mouth from that first bite. And when you do that, it makes a huge difference. You're eating slower. It feels like you're absorbing more. You're really in tune with exactly what's happening. And sometimes your body's like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
And you listen to that, because sometimes we just eat something and then we're done. And we're like, oh gosh, I don't feel good.
Yep.
Well, maybe if you listened through the first 40 bites, when your body was saying, stop eating this, you would have stopped.
Yeah, I actually have a freebie on intouchnutrition.com, and
Mhm.
it lists, it's like a 2-pager that just has those practices of mindful eating, because that is exactly like, that is what I mean, like reconnecting your gut and your brain, and you have to do it slowly. You have to use every single sense. It has to be a fully involved process, and and that
Mhm.
is really hard for people because we're go go go. Like,
Yeah.
people do not know how to take time to eat. I mean, I cannot tell you, even me, the amount of times I've just stood at my standing desk at work and eaten
Mhm.
lunch just standing there, like, just because I got to get it in because I'm hungry. But it's like,
You're
well,
busy.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's like, that is not the goal, right? Like, even in other countries and other cultures, like, they take full 3-hour breaks to eat, right? Their lunch.
Mhm.
And over here, we're just like, walking
Just
and
those French
eating.
people.
Yeah. I would love to do that.
Right?
That
That
would
would
be
be
cool.
amazing. If we
Yeah,
could do that in America, everyone would learn how to mindfully eat so quickly, and it would be amazing.
it
Because you
would.
wouldn't need to eat a Lunchable, because you would have longer than 15 minutes to sit down and eat your lunch.
Right. Yeah, you could
Yeah.
eat something decent. I used to
Yeah.
lead yoga retreats back when I was teaching yoga and leading yoga teacher training. And I'd take people on retreats, and 1 or 2 meals during that weekend we would eat in silence,
Mm,
so that they had, in order to facilitate them paying attention, smelling the food, tasting the food, chewing the food, feeling what happens when it hits your gut. And oh boy, that would just drive some people crazy. They couldn't handle being silent just for a meal.
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that I've seen with past clients, when I'm like, part of this is minimizing distractions. And so if you're a TV watcher while you eat, cut it off. They're like,
Hmm.
well, I can be mindful if the TV is on. And I'm like, You really can't, because research shows that we cannot multitask.
Right.
Like, multitasking doesn't work in our brain. And so why do we think that we'll be able to nourish our bodies well and also watch some, I don't know, the latest episode of whatever's on, you know?
Yeah. Plus the whole energy exchange that's happening. Instead of focusing on the energy exchange from the food, you're now being bombarded with signals and media and colors and sounds that
Yeah,
are overwhelming your senses.
absolutely.
So you've been doing this for 9 years.
Yeah. Yep. Going on 9. Makes me
That's
feel
great.
old.
You're not old. We're old.
Well, I think
So,
it's important that if you're going to take this journey, say you're overweight, say you're 80 pounds overweight, and right now I'm about 170, 168 pounds, but 4 or 5 years ago, I was like right around 205. I had this big bear gut, and I didn't really think about it. I just said, well, I'm 55 years old at the time. This is not good. I'm gonna, I've had friends in their 50s keel over and die who are in better shape than me. I have to get this fixed. And the first thing I did was just stop soda.
Mm-hmm. That's a
And
big one.
about 10 pounds came off in a week and a half.
Yeah.
Just 10 pounds, just from soda and from 2 or 3 a day of
you
Coke and
mean
Pepsi.
diabetes water, right? Is that?
Diabetes.
Well, that's really what it is, right? It is.
I mean, have you seen the pictures of how much sugar is actually in those cans?
How do they do that? It's insane.
It's insane. I mean, it's tasty. I grew up drinking Coke.
Oh, I love it. And I will cheat now and then. I probably have one a month, maybe.
Yeah.
But
Which
I
is
don't
fine.
miss it. But after even just a couple weeks, you just don't miss it anymore.
Right.
And take the 2 teaspoons of sugar out of the coffee. Okay, well, I've been drinking black coffee for years, but every now and then I put some of that sweet creamer, and it's good. But no more. But if you just can stop those added sugars, and you for sure could just drop that weight a bunch to get you jump started really quickly. Can you explain the difference between, you said earlier, if you eat a bunch, like if I eat a pineapple, first of all, I don't want to eat that much of it because after, it's just too sugar and too sweet. I don't want any more of it. But what is the difference between that sugar molecule or the one I take out and sprinkle on the cornflakes in the morning? What's the difference in those sugars, and why do they break down different?
Right. So we're talking simple carbohydrates and complex carbohydrates, right? So your simple carbs are the ones that are like fully processed, that table sugar, right? It's a single molecule that takes your body basically no time to process through, right? It's going to go in, it's pretty much already broken down, you're going to absorb it real quick. And especially if it's in liquid form, right? It's pre-dissolved then. So your body is just like, whoop, I'll take that. Whereas
your sugar level spiking.
Oh yeah. It's like we want that nice little like wave for sugar, but when you drink sugar, it goes whoop and then like takes a little while to come down. So that is simple, right? Simple is a simple molecule. You're absorbing it really quickly, usually processed, or just doesn't. So complex carbs basically are multi-molecule carbohydrates that almost have something that creates a barrier to digestion. So you can think of complex carbohydrates as your higher fiber carbohydrates. So that's going to be things like your whole grains and your fruits and your vegetables that have skin on them, and things that are just fibrous. Like when you chew a pineapple, you feel all those strings. When you chew an apple skin, it's really tough and stringy, right? Strawberries have those seeds, all these things that are fibrous. When you swallow that, it takes your body a decent amount of time to digest that. So fiber, I word it as kind of creates a barrier to digesting the sugars, and it creates like a slower digestion process. So then you're not absorbing it so quickly. And then if you add on another layer to that, which goes into like just general good nutrition, snacks, right? Like if you're just going to have an apple as a snack, that's fine, but that still is a straight up sugar snack, right? It is complex, so it is going to digest a little slower than if you just drank apple juice. But level it up one more level and add protein to that. And protein creates an additional barrier to that sugar digestion and also leaves you feeling full for longer. So simple carbs, they're going to digest quickly. That's all your white stuff. Table sugar, added sugar, white bread, white rice, normal spaghetti pasta. Complex carbohydrates, going to digest slower, typically fibrous, whole wheat pasta, beans, potatoes, whatever, the list goes on, fruits, all of that stuff, your fibrous leafy greens. And then your protein foods are like your meats, your beans also go into that. Fish, eggs, peanut butter counts. Yeah.
Rick mentioned pineapple, so I got to share this. So my neighbor brought over a pineapple the other day that was grown by her grandmother. And every time I've had pineapple, I can only eat a little bit. My mouth starts to get that acidy feeling. I can't eat a lot because of what's on my tongue.
Yeah, where you're like, yeah.
Yeah. So she said it was ripened on the vine. And she said, you'll notice a difference when you eat it. So we literally, my wife and I ate that entire pineapple in one setting and never got that feeling. And it was because it was ripened on the vine and not picked early, like most of the pineapples we buy in the grocery store.
Yeah. Because it probably didn't have that enzymatic, there's an enzymatic reaction that happens when it ripens on the vine versus ripens on the counter.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can tell if you've ever grown your own garden vegetables or been anywhere else, it's the same with everything else. Like the enzymes are just more friendly to our body because it's the natural plant's process of ripening.
Yeah. I wish we could get, I mean, it would be hard for the grocery stores to carry stuff like that, obviously, but.
Yeah, I know. Even, and I had this epiphany the other day because we do a garden in our backyard in the summer. And I bought the vine ripened tomatoes from the grocery store. They are like, the vine is like cut off the plant while they're still green and then ripened. And I like my whole entire life, I didn't realize that until this year for some reason. And I was like, how could I have been so silly to not realize this? But
well, I think it's not your fault, but I think there's just a lot of naiveness. We assume assumptions about our food.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that most fruits and vegetables, or all fruits and vegetables that are in a grocery store, even if they say organic, are sprayed. They're sprayed when they come before they go into the grocery store. There's pesticides on it. There's like a potato in the grocery store. If it wasn't sprayed, it would be sprouting and growing. That's what potatoes do. But they spray it with something to keep it from doing that. And unless you're scrubbing or peeling, you're eating that.
Yeah. And it's crazy that the organic, like the classification organic, like is not that strict. So
no.
Even when you're eating organic foods, you still kind of don't know what you're getting. So we just have an impossible food system.
We do.
Right.
Yeah, my brother-in-law knew a distributor in Canada that was distributing tomatoes. And he said it was the same tomatoes, some labeled organic, some labeled non-organic, exact same tomato. We just got paid more for the organic ones.
That is
such
so
a rip-off.
ridiculous. That is so ridiculous.
It is.
Well, I think you have to, I mean, the best way to get your food, I think, is what you said earlier. At the farmers markets around the corner.
Sometimes.
If you have that ability, or you could have a co-op farm like I was talking about earlier. But I spent a year in the Dallas area, and you can drive an hour and you're still in town in busy suburbs, and it's hard to find, it doesn't, it's not that easy depending on some parts of the country where you live. But if you have that ability to start and maintain a relationship with a local farmer, then that's going to help also. Like we have a guest coming on next month, a personal friend of mine. She kind of quit her whole life in the corporate world and bought a couple of acres, and now she's an organic farmer. She raises chickens, and
that is a dream.
It's
a lot of work.
Well, she used to live in a 3-bedroom house, and now she lives in a trailer on her 2 acres, but she's so happy. She just digs it. She's out working with her hands every single day. And I took Rocky there, my dog. Me and Carrie were there with Rocky, and this turkey comes out from behind like this bale of hay or something, and it was like Rocky saw Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. You can scare a Yorkie with the turkey.
Well, yeah, and I think like to that point, just one thing I would encourage people, because everyone is in a different boat with their health and their nutrition, right? And so like, what is one thing that you can do to improve where you currently are? Like, is it just, do I need to fix the snacks I'm snacking on? Do I need to make those more wholesome? Am I in a place where I can start buying from a co-op and that would like make my eating more wholesome? Am I in a place where I literally just need to stop sodas and continue eating the way I'm eating until I start making more changes? So just like encouraging people to start where they are. And because we do live in an extremely overwhelming food system, and
Yes.
it is really hard to figure out where to start, and you just have to start with one thing.
And there's no truth in labeling. They call things natural, they're unnatural.
But if you
No additives, but
But
they
if you
can
can
add stuff
stay out
to
of
it.
the aisles of the grocery store, you don't have to read those labels.
Yeah.
I try not to buy things with
Mhm.
ingredients. I don't want to know. I don't want your ingredients. I just want your unprocessed whole food if possible.
Right.
And
Yeah.
staying out of the aisles is a big part of it. Not
Mhm.
buying it to begin with. I mean, if I have a half a gallon of chocolate ice cream in my house, it's going to get gone in 2 days. It just will. So I can't buy that stuff. I just can't. And you know, sometimes 9 o'clock at night, I'm gonna run up and buy a $7, you know, pint of Haagen-Dazs,
Yeah.
which I don't anymore, but I used to quite often. Uh, but it is truly giving up one thing at a time, starting with the sodas, the big ones.
Mhm.
You know, the sodas and the sugars. It's
Yep.
tough, but if you can just knock sodas out and still keep ice cream,
Yes.
and then in a month, get rid of the ice cream.
And knowing yourself too. Like if you
Mhm.
know, because I will never sit here and tell you to give up ice cream. I love ice cream through and
For
through.
sure.
Like, but knowing yourself, if that is something that you struggle with, or that might be a food that you are overeating and you know it, and it's something that you do just need to like get rid of for X amount of time until you feel confident that when it's in your house, you will not eat the whole thing and you can eat it in moderation, then I think that's like totally fine. But otherwise, if you have the moderation mindset and you can keep it in your house, then go for it by all means.
Sure, that makes sense.
I don't
Yeah.
have that ability. I just don't. I just don't. 2
But you
nights
know
ago,
it about yourself. That's the important thing.
Yes,
it
that is
really
the
is. That's
important
why
thing.
I just don't buy it.
Mhm.
But like a couple days ago, I'm just going through the cabinet looking for something, and I found an old thing of Christmas gummies, the red and green, the
Oh,
cinnamon and the
please tell me you
wintergreens.
threw those away.
Right?
Oh, they were so good.
No.
Did you eat them?
I did because they're
Oh man.
it's
Oh,
like
see, I can't do old candy.
I am like, no, they were still nice and fresh. Anyway.
Fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Fine
Right.
ripened.
Like the 8-month-old Big Mac that doesn't break down or
Yeah.
change at all. Okay, the same freshness. I get. Oh,
Yep.
I
That high
feel.
fructose corn syrup.
I feel
Mhm.
evil, and I poisoned myself.
You did not. You did not.
You
You
made it
don't
to
do that
60.
every
You're doing all
day.
right.
So it's okay.
But when I do have those Joneses on sugars, and I just go through it or eat that extra piece of chocolate cake or that half a gallon of ice cream, the next morning I just feel like total dog crap.
Yeah, you
Mhm.
feel
I
like you
mean,
have a hangover.
it is a hangover.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's worse than a hangover.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, it's more of a headache. Yeah, it's just terrible.
Mhm.
Yeah. And sugar actually like messes with our hormone release. And so like when we eat sugar, it's giving us all these excited hormones. And so we just want to keep it coming back and coming back. And that's why people have such a hard time getting rid of it,
It's
because
very addictive.
it
Yeah.
truly is addictive. Yeah.
I heard this lady talking the other day. Jim will know. You guys both know that it's like a infertility item, PCOS, or what's it called? CPOS.
PCOS.
Yeah.
That is actually doctors treat it with a diabetes drug because it really is like a type 3 diabetes, where if women would just monitor their sugar levels, their glucose levels, that can cure itself in 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks, instead of taking that diabetes drug to counter the insulin spike from the sugar that you shouldn't be eating or being counseled to eat to begin with.
Yeah. And a lot of that, yeah. And again, such a loaded thing, right? Like PCOS causes a lot of emotions and ill feelings and just, deeper down emotional issues. So the diet is really hard. And then if you are struggling with blood sugar on top of being pregnant or trying to get pregnant, like just, it is a whole thing. But I agree with you. Diet definitely can play a huge role in helping alleviate some of the symptoms.
Yeah, those infertility symptoms are basically caused by that same sugar we've been talking about for 40 minutes now. But they rather load you up with IVF drugs.
I know. Well, right, big pharma. That's the world we're in.
Yeah.
It truly is. It truly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like part of the.
And on the other side of it, it's hard for the medical community. Okay, they're coming in, and you're working with them. They're basically sick. You have to treat them. You can't say, "Oh, make all these well." You can say, make these lifestyle changes, but you can't enforce it.
Yeah. Yeah, because
people are going to do what they want to do.
But they never even get advised. I don't think it's the doctor's fault. They don't get trained. They don't get trained on nutrition.
Yeah.
A doctor goes to med school for 8, 9, 10 years and never gets trained.
They have like one semester of a nutrition class.
Yeah.
Well, that's why
which they teach my plate.
Yeah. Nothing valuable.
Right.
Yeah. And I do appreciate our healthcare field does employ dietitians in every single hospital. So there's at least that, but you're relying on a couple people for hundreds of patients. And is that really realistic to get the education they need? No.
So
when they're sick and they're not even clear in the head and have all these other stressors going on.
Yeah. The dietitian, they're like, oh, that person came to see me.
Right.
Is there not a lot of processed foods that go on hospital trays in hospitals?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I wouldn't eat any of it.
Yeah.
No. It's like,
I will say I worked for a hospital.
It's a slight upgrade from jail food, right?
Yeah. I worked for a hospital that had excellent food, and I was very impressed. And they made theirs fresh every single day, and I ate it every single day. It was good.
And that's wonderful if that's that's great. And I do know that those situations exist.
But that's not the standard.
But it's not the rule. Yeah. It's the processed foods and the sugars and all that other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it comes back down to how do we get everyone to be able to eat this diet that's rich in vitamins and minerals and fresh whole foods and high fiber and lean proteins and all the vegetable, like how do we get this to be a thing when we have such a chaotic food system? It feels so unachievable.
Right.
Unless you move to Spain.
Not everybody's doing that.
Yeah.
Well,
I have a couple of questions, and then I have a kind of a big question too. Maybe I'll start with that one. Let's go cholesterol. So I used to bring this nutrition into my yoga teacher training classes, and he talked to everybody about nutrition, eat whole, non-processed foods, basically. But he'd talk about cholesterol, and he'd say, cholesterol is needed in the body because that's what repairs fissures in your arteries. He said, cutting out cholesterol is like killing the fireman that comes to put out the fire at your house. So I know there's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. He said, even the bad cholesterol, you should not be taking statins. You should not be getting on these cholesterol drugs, even if your bad cholesterol is high. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you talking cholesterol, like dietary cholesterol from food? Or are you just talking like internal cholesterol numbers?
Well, like your internal cholesterol numbers when they check your blood and they tell you, okay, your good cholesterol is high, but your good cholesterol is in a good range, but your bad cholesterol is high. We need to put you on this statin.
Okay. So I'm not a medication person, right? I think medications can help when they are needed. And I think they can jumpstart things when they are needed. If you just need like an extra push to get to a place where you can be off of them. I never would go medication first. That's just like not the type of practitioner I am. With cholesterol, HDL is good, LDL is bad. Cholesterol is what can cause heart attacks and clog your arteries. So when your LDL is elevated consistently for a period of time, right? And not just like you go to the doctor for your annual physical and it's high. That's fine. Change your diet, see if you can naturally bring it down. But I would never sit here, and I'm not a doctor, so I cannot prescribe medications or anything. So this is totally opinion. I would never sit here and tell someone that had sky high LDL and they had already tried diet and exercise. I would not sit here and say, don't take that medicine. That's not going to help.
Well, I'll chime in on the statin thing. Because probably 10 years ago, I go for my regular physical. My doc says, oh, you got high cholesterol, here's your statin. Okay, I'm taking now high blood pressure medication. I'm taking statins for this. And I'm just doing my thing, what every American does. They listen to their doc, they take their statin, which like 80% of people are on now. But since then, I'm not on any medication at all.
Amazing.
But well, that's because I don't believe in any of it anymore. But what it is a big factory. It's a lifetime. They want lifetime pharmaceutical customers, and they create them and they get them. But number one, there was no need for lowering your cholesterol until 30 years ago when the statin showed up and said, wait, what does this drug do? Oh, wait, look, this drug magically lowers cholesterol. And then over the course of a couple years, they told docs, hey, it's really important we get these people, get this cholesterol down. There was no such thing as high cholesterol in the 50s and 60s because there was no drug to fix it. Now that we have a drug, they found a drug to do something, and then they found a problem to make it work for. But it was never really a problem, and I don't believe still isn't. There's so many added benefits to that cholesterol, like as far as brain synapse firing, and it all is relation to those cholesterol numbers. And if you take the statins and reduce those cholesterol numbers for little to no benefit at all.
Yeah.
There's really no studies on the other side of that shows huge benefits of taking statins for 20 years to get your cholesterol from 260 to 220.
Yeah.
There's no benefits at all. So, and I would challenge anyone to find it. And if someone could show me that, then I might consider getting back on statins if my numbers were bad. But I don't think they exist.
Definitely cholesterol has been associated, just like high blood pressure has been associated with risk of cardiovascular disease and heart attack, right? And so I think that's where that push for bringing those numbers down comes in. But I also I have a problem with the numbers sometimes because I'm like, is the number right for every single body? Or do some people's bodies run higher naturally and that's okay? Or do some people's bodies run lower and that's also okay? So I think the specific number that we're trying to achieve could be revisited. And I think that could be a more individualized care topic. Nutrition, very individualized to each person, right? I'm not going to say the same thing to you as I'm going to say to you. We're going to be on totally different pages. But I hear you on doctors just throwing medications out because that's what they do. Mm-hmm. And I don't think this goes back to the very beginning. I don't think we have enough education in the healthcare system for people to feel confident enough to say, no, you're not taking them anymore. That's amazing. But people don't know that that's an option because these doctors are so willing to just throw a drug at you instead of saying, hey, your LDL might be high because you're eating a little too much saturated fat. So cut back on your red meat intake, cut back on the ground meats you're eating for a little while, and we'll see if it changes. And if it changes, then we know that your body isn't supposed to be at that high level, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think there are associations with cardiovascular disease. Would I immediately put someone on a drug like that doctor did? Absolutely not. I would take a diet approach always.
Yeah, I think that's much wiser. So the other questions I had was on omega-3s, what your feelings are the best source and the importance of omega-3s.
Yes.
I'll let you start with that.
So
there's 3s and 6s, right?
Yes. And you know what?
Omega-3 is omega-6.
I literally every time have to look up the different foods that provide both of them, but they all go interchangeably basically. But these are the type of fats that our bodies process best because they don't have any double bonds. So their molecular structure is single bonded. So they break down a lot easier. So I said saturated fat a second ago. Saturated fat is what's found in mostly the fat that you can see visibly solid at room temperature. So the fat on your steak and butter, and animal-based fats are those saturated fats. Omega-3 and 6s are your unsaturated fats. So they only have that single bond between molecules. So when you eat them and digest them, your body actually uses them for good, right? This may be related to like the cholesterol thing, because fat can synthesize cholesterol in our body, and our body synthesizes it itself. But all of these omega-3s and 6s have shown amazing brain health benefits, nerve benefits, like heart health benefits, I mean, skin benefits. The list goes on and on and on. And I'm not saying like omega-3s and 6s need to be the only thing you ever eat, because it's this magical thing. But when eaten in a balanced diet, they are an amazing source of nutrition that have really awesome long-term benefits. And so you can find these if you're a fish eater, seafood eater. It's found in fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, I think also. And then it's found in your nuts and seeds. So any nut and seed, walnuts, sunflower seed, any of them. Pistachios, it's lower fat, but they're in there. It's also found in your plant-based oils. So like avocado oil, olive oil, things like that. They are extremely important. Basically, every single cell in our body has a double layer of fat around it that maintains the integrity of the cell, right? And so when we eat these fats, they're actually nourishing our cells, and our bodies need fat. And especially these omega-3s and 6s, which our body loves to digest because they're easy to digest. So that is like one of the most recommended things. Going back to that Mediterranean diet way of eating, getting your omega-3s and 6s over those saturated fats from animal-based products is the best way that we can be nourishing our bodies with fat. And it's a necessary nutrient.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And the other one was vitamins. I once heard that, if you're spending money on vitamins, you're basically creating expensive urine.
Yeah. I love that. A lot of the vitamins are water soluble, so they are going to come out in our pee. Some vitamins are only fat soluble. My thing with vitamins is it kind of depends on your age, right? Like if you're a woman in childbearing years, like you need extra folate. So you should probably be taking a vitamin if you are not getting enough of those folic acid containing foods in your diet, which it's really hard to do, especially if you are pregnant. Whereas if you're
leafy greens, is that folic acid full? Yeah.
Yep. Leafy green veggies. Whereas if you're older, it's kind of like if you eat well and you eat consistently and you have a stable weight and you have a healthy lifestyle and you're moving your body and you're lifting weights and walking and things like that, and you feel like you're getting enough nutrition from your food, I don't think it's necessary, but I also don't think it hurts. So like if it will make you feel better to take a vitamin, by all means take a vitamin, but I also don't think it's highly necessary. Now that comes with like, try to see doctors regularly, get blood work done, because you want to make sure that your bones are healthy, right? Because calcium, vitamin D, those things are so important, especially as we were aging. And so you just want to make sure that if your diet is not balanced, probably a good idea to take them. If you feel like you eat good sources of protein every meal, if you feel like you're getting good fruits and vegetables, whole grains, like really getting that good balance, then you're probably totally fine to not have one.
I'm kind of a rookie at this nutrition thing, but I've really, for the past, like I said, 5 or 6 years, been trying to really educate myself, and I'm certainly done better. But it's still like I get more confused as I go along. The more I learn, it just gets more confusing, and it really is kind of hard to do it right and know. So to have someone like you to talk to is really kind of, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Now I know.
I hope I was able to give you some good insight.
And we appreciate that. And we like the work that you're doing. I mean, I know it's mostly women, but you're helping women with a serious issue in this country. You know, how to get the right nutrition, how to not body shame, how to, you know, do what's right for you the best you can do. I mean, some women are just, I think I read on your website, overworked, overstressed, overcommitted. I mean, there's just so much that we're doing. And then to say, you know, you just can't throw at them, you're eating wrong. You got to do this. You know,
Yeah.
you're taking it one step at a time, working a program. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And add like getting older to that and every hormones and body changes. And it's, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what I do and I'm so happy to be able to do it.
Do you work with a lot of women going through menopause or?
Yeah, actually, most of my age range is like 30, 40, 50.
Okay. I know we're about out of time, but I just got to ask, hormone wise, going through menopause, what do you recommend? Any diet changes or?
You know, protein is really important during that time.
Okay.
And vitamin B12, I actually just
Hmm.
realized this.
Okay.
So if you eat a vegan diet, it's really hard to get that because it's mostly found in protein foods,
Mm-hmm.
meat, poultry, fish. But it's also in a lot of fortified foods. So that is one nutrient that I'm kind of digging into more research on right now, but it's been shown to have a lot of good positive benefits during menopause.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
What about a success story?
What?
Like one of your patients, if you want to call them that, or
Yeah.
your clients.
Clients.
Get a good success story you could relay?
Yeah. So again, my program is a lot of really like deep diving into what makes you do the things you do right now with your nutrition. And I had a person who was just really, really like in a complete rut, like so totally dissatisfied with body, struggling in relationship, like hard, like work was so impossible. She couldn't get herself to the gym, like all of these, just like a rut where you're just like not in the right headspace. And we worked together for a few months. And I mean, doing one-on-one sessions, deep diving into why do you believe this about yourself and why do you believe this about your food, and having she was having trouble with binge eating and things like that. And so getting to the root of the causes of that, and she did all this amazing, I mean, this is not easy work, and I don't know if you guys have done any like therapy type stuff, but that
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. And she got to a point where she had a few epiphanies, and she got herself back to the gym regularly, like doing the workouts that she loved to do, not forcing herself, just like doing the thing that made her feel good. She was able to totally stop binge eating. She was able to eat mindfully nearly 100% of the time. I think she had like one day on a vacation she went on where she was like, I wasn't mindful at all, but I did just want the food. And I was like, that's fine. So she had
Yeah.
just this complete 180 and started living. She told me she just started living more mindfully. Like everything she did, she thought mindfully about because of the work we had done together. And that is my goal. Like I want us all, and you as a yogi, like mindfulness is so important to reduce
It
stress.
is.
And going back to chronic disease and everything, stress is one of the biggest problems.
Stress
And
is a killer.
creator, yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so to be able to start with mindfulness and nutrition and then see that carry over was just amazing for her. And yeah, and she doesn't have to see me anymore. Like I'm done and it's wonderful. And that's what I tell my people. I say, I don't want to have to see you anymore. And like, I'm going to see you until you are good and you can fly away and never see me again.
I have a feeling that they don't want to let go at that point.
Yeah. Some people are ready. They're like, I've worked too hard for this.
Yeah.
It's gotta feel good though
Yeah.
if you can, because getting in shape, getting your body together, getting mindful. I mean, none of it's easy, and none of it's immediate gratification either.
No,
You
Mm-mm.
go out and cut your grass and it looks good a half hour later. That's immediate gratification.
Yeah.
You want to get from that 205-pound guy to the 170-pound
Yeah.
guy. takes a while.
It does. And it takes support. And that's what people forget. There's all these programs that are very hands-off, like do it yourself, but sometimes you need support when it's been years of you being in that place. You just need someone there to say, hey, I got you. And however many steps you take back, we're going to leap forward like tenfold. And I think that's the biggest thing about my program is like support. You need that when you're trying to make a lifelong change. So
you do. And it can be really tough when your family's eating a certain way, your friends are eating a certain way, you go to events, they all eat a certain way. And then you're trying to be different.
Yeah.
That can be really challenging.
Absolutely. And it almost has to be like a family-wide like change to be truly successful.
Well, eating right should be a family thing.
Should be an American thing.
It really should be, you know? So
yes, it really should be. I totally agree.
Well, I hope this podcast reaches people that need this message and gain and benefit from it.
Go see Margaret at intouchnutrition.com.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Visit again with us maybe in a few months. Come back and see us again.
Absolutely.
That'd be cool.
Sounds good. We'd love to have you back.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right, Margaret. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a great night.
Have an amazing evening.
Bye now. You too.
See you, Margaret.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So if you just listen to this podcast and you appreciate the content and the work that we're doing, we would love your support. Look in the comment section of this episode. Subscribe, rate us, comment. This gets our podcast in front of other listeners. And if you noticed, we don't have advertisers. For the cost of a cup of coffee, you can help keep it this way. Become a supporter right now. We'd appreciate it. I'm Jim the Yogi.
I'm Rick the BeachMan.